She wasn't supposed to find out this way. Amara-chan stood in the bathroom of Seoul's most exclusive penthouse, staring at something that looked innocent, but felt like a bomb. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Not from fear. From rage so pure it felt like acid in her veins. 2 lines. That's all it took to shatter everything. The pregnancy test sat on the marble counter like an accusation. Amara had taken it twice. Then again for good measure. Same result each time, which meant one of 2 things. Either she'd made the worst mistake of her life, or someone had made it for her. She knew which one it was. No. No, no, no. She whispered it like a prayer. Like saying it enough times could rewind the last 3 months and make them disappear. But the lines didn't change. Her reflection in the mirror looked like a stranger. Dark eyes wide, brown skin flushed, curls that had been twisted into a neat crown this morning, now falling wild around her face, like she'd been fighting something. Maybe she had. The bathroom windows framed Seoul's glittering skyline. Beautiful. Suffocating. Everything about this penthouse was like that, gorgeous and suffocating. Amara. His voice came from the other side of the door. Low. Smooth. Possessive in a way that made her stomach twist. Not a question. A summons. She didn't answer. Couldn't. Her chest felt too tight, like someone had wrapped their hands around her ribs and was squeezing. I know you're in there. He wasn't angry. That's what terrified her. He sounded patient. Like he'd been waiting for this moment. Like he'd orchestrated it. Come out. Her legs moved before her mind caught up. Muscle memory or instinct. She wasn't sure anymore which one she could trust. The door opened and there he was. Marcus Kong stood against the doorframe like he owned it. Like he owned everything. His suit jacket was gone, his white shirt unbuttoned to his chest, revealing the tattoo that started at his collarbone and crawled down his body like a living thing. A dragon mid-flight. Wings spread. Scales disappearing beneath expensive fabric and skin. At 6'2", he made her 5'6" frame feel small. Made her feel exposed. But it wasn't his height that stopped her breath. It was his eyes. Dark. Knowing. The eyes of someone who'd been waiting. You already knew, she said. Not a question. A realization that fell between them like breaking glass. Of course I knew. The simplicity of it hit harder than a confession. This wasn't a mistake. This was a plan. We used protection. Every time. Every single time. Her voice was cracking now. The rage making room for something uglier. Something that felt like betrayal. What did you do, Marcus? He moved toward her, and she felt the predatory grace in his step. Once upon a time, that smoothness had made her feel safe. Protected. Now it made her feel like prey studying its hunter. I stopped using them 4 weeks ago. The words didn't make sense. They landed like separate things 4 weeks ago. Like he was breaking them into pieces so she could really understand what he was saying. You didn't. She couldn't finish the sentence. I did. He didn't look guilty. Didn't look ashamed. He looked satisfied. Like he'd accomplished something. You never noticed because you weren't thinking about much when I had you close to me. Heat flooded her face. Not from embarrassment. From fury mixed with shame mixed with the memory of his hands, his mouth, the way he'd spoken in Korean in low tones against her skin. Words she'd pretended not to understand. Words she'd understood perfectly. She raised her hand. It was instinct. Pure animal instinct. His wrist caught hers mid-swing, not harsh, just firm. Controlled. Like even his rejection of her violence had to be calculated. His grip was strong enough to stop her but gentle enough not to bruise. You deliberately got me pregnant to keep me trapped. It wasn't a question. It was the only explanation that made sense. Yes. One word. No hesitación. No epálisis. No pretense. That single word did something to her chest. Something she couldn't name. He released her wrist and brought his hand to her face instead. His fingers traced her jaw with a tenderness that contradicted everything he'd just admitted. I'm never letting you go, he said. And he meant it. Every word hung in the air like a vow and a threat wrapped together. Amara shoved against his chest. You're insane. You know that? You trapped me. You took away my choice. I trapped us both. He cut her off, and for the first time since she'd met him, she saw something crack in his expression. Something vulnerable hiding underneath all that certainty. Do you know what it means when someone like me cares about someone? He didn't wait for her answer. It means you become a target. It means every person who wants to hurt me knows exactly who to go after. It means, he stopped, his jaw tightening. It means you're in danger just by existing in my life. Amara pulled away from him, her mind racing through possibilities, escape routes, ways out of this nightmare. 3 months. She'd spent 3 months with this man. 3 months thinking she was falling for him. 3 months completely blind. Why would you do this if it puts us both in danger? The question came out broken. That doesn't make sense. Because you were leaving. His voice shifted, became something darker, something desperate. Your contract was ending. You were going back to Atlanta, back to your safe little life, back to forgetting about me like I was just a story. He stepped closer. I couldn't let that happen. Amara's breath came in short gasps, not from physical fear, from the realization that she was standing in a penthouse in Seoul with a man who'd trapped her so methodically, so deliberately, that she hadn't even seen it coming. You could have just asked me to stay, she whispered. Would you have? The question hung between them. She wanted to say yes. She wanted to believe she would have chosen him. But they both knew the truth. She wouldn't have. She couldn't have. And he'd known that from the beginning. His hand came up to her face again, and this time she didn't pull away. His thumb traced her cheekbone like she was something precious. Like she was worth destroying his own life for. I'm not a good man, Amara. I've done things that would make you sick. But I'm yours now. And you're mine. And nothing in this world, will change that. When he kissed her, it tasted like obsession and promise and the darkest kind of love. And the worst part? She didn't stop him. Later, after he fell asleep, Amara stood in front of that same mirror. Same face. Same body. But everything inside her had shifted. She was trapped. And she was carrying his child. And the thought of escape terrified her almost as much as the thought of staying. Amara made one mistake. She trusted the wrong person. Or maybe she made the right choice with the wrong man. Either way, she's pregnant, trapped in a penthouse, and completely at Marcus's mercy. But here's what she doesn't know yet. What's about to destroy her understanding of everything. In exactly 72 hours, her best friend is going to file a missing person report. And that report will trigger something bigger than Marcus's obsession. Something that will force Amara to choose between two impossible cages. One built by a man who loves her. One built by people she trusted her entire life. When the truth comes out, she'll realize her entire existence was constructed. Every job. Every relationship. Every reason she came to Seoul. None of it was real. And by then it'll be too late to escape either cage. If you need to know what happens when Amara discovers her life is a lie, hit subscribe right now. This story spirals into darkness you won't see coming. The moment her best friend makes that call changes everything. Drop a comment. Would you choose the monster who trapped you, or the system that constructed you? Because Amara's about to answer that question in a way that will break your heart. Subscribe. Don't miss the moment her world shatters. The clinic didn't look like a clinic. It looked like the kind of place celebrities went when they wanted to disappear. No saini. No waiting room with magazines or other patients. Just a sleek door, Marcus's hand on her lower back, and the weight of what was growing inside her body. Dr. Han was waiting. She was in her 50s, with silver streaking her black hair and eyes that saw too much. The kind of doctor who asked questions with her silence instead of her words. 10 weeks along, Dr. Han said, studying the ultrasound screen. Healthy heartbeat. Perfect measurements. The baby is thriving. Amara felt something shift in her chest. Not joy. Something more complicated. Something that felt like grief mixed with inevitability. She was really pregnant. This was really happening. Marcus's hand tightened on her shoulder, and she noticed he wasn't looking at the screen. He was looking at her. Like she was the miracle, not the baby. That should have felt romantic. It felt like ownership. Rest is important, Dr. Han continued, her eyes flicking between them like she was reading a story written in the space between their bodies. Stress isn't good for the baby. Or for you. Marcus nodded like he'd already made plans to eliminate every possible source of stress from Amara's life. Like he could control the uncontrollable. The private jet landed before sunset. Amara had never been on a private plane before. She'd expected to feel powerful. Instead, she felt trapped in a smaller, faster prison. From the tarmac, she could see it rising from the island like something out of a magazine spread. The house. Except house didn't capture it. It was glass and steel, and the kind of modern architecture that made poverty look like a choice. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the East China Sea like a painting you could never leave. Home, Marcus said, his hand already possessive on her waist. Amara stepped out of the car and felt it immediately. The salt air. The sound of waves hitting volcanic rock below. The absence of other people. The isolation. It's beautiful, she heard herself say. It's safe, he corrected. And there was something in his voice that told her he wasn't talking about beauty. He was talking about walls. About distance. About how far away this place was from anywhere she could possibly escape to. The interior was what happened when obsession met unlimited money. Italian marble. Korean art that probably costs more than her entire life savings. A kitchen bigger than her Atlanta apartment. Everything meticulously designed, carefully curated, completely devoid of personality. A showcase. Not a home. You can walk anywhere on this property, Marcus said, and she noticed he was being very specific with his words. Anywhere on this property. Not beyond it. The beach is accessible through the back path. The gardens are yours. I want you comfortable. Just not free, Amara said quietly. He didn't flinch. Didn't pretend she'd said something else. You're carrying my child, he said instead. Freedom is a luxury I can't afford to give you. That's when she noticed them. Tay at the north gate. Men circling the perimeter every 45 minutes like clockwork. Both built like walls. Both carrying weapons under their jackets like it was part of their uniform. Armed guards. On a private island. 24 hours a day. That's when freedom stopped being theoretical and became a math problem. How do you escape from a fortress? How do you cross a gate guarded by people trained to kill? How do you protect a baby when you can't even protect yourself? She woke up at 3 in the morning to find Marcus watching her. Not sleeping. Watching. His head rested against the pillow, his dark eyes open and fixed on her face like she might disappear if he looked away. The dragon tattoo on his chest rose and fell with each breath. In the darkness, it looked like it was moving. Alive. How long have you been awake? She asked. Since you fell asleep. He said it like that was normal. Like watching someone sleep for hours was just something you did when you loved them. That's not healthy, she said. Neither is what I did to you. He reached over and tucked a curl behind her ear with a tenderness that contradicted everything about him. But here we are. She should have moved away. Should have created distance. Instead, she let him pull her closer until her head rested on his chest, and she could hear his heartbeat. Steady. Strong. Possessive even in sleep. That's when she understood something terrifying. He wasn't going to let her go. Not ever. And somehow, that was becoming okay. The next morning, coffee was waiting. Not just any coffee. Her coffee. The kind she'd mentioned once in passing 3 months ago. The expensive blend from the cafe in Gangnam that she'd complained was overpriced but secretly loved. He'd remembered. Marcus sat across from her in the kitchen. Watching her drink it like her satisfaction was more important than his own meal. His white shirt was unbuttoned at the collar. The morning light caught the edges of his tattoo. You're staring, she said. I know. It's unsettling. Good. He wasn't trying to hide anything anymore. Wasn't pretending to be anyone but exactly who he was. A man who'd trapped her, impregnated her, and was now openly admitting that watching her was the thing that mattered most to him. Eggs? He asked, standing to move toward the kitchen. You need protein. The baby needs. I know what the baby needs, she interrupted. I have internet. I have a brain. You have a body growing another human, he said quietly. That's all the brain you need right now. Let me take care of the rest. And that's what terrified her most. He was good at this. At making her feel wanted. At making captivity feel like love. By day 5, Amara had memorized the patterns. Tay took his cigarette break at the North Gate at exactly 10:47 a.m. every morning. 7 minutes. Min's patrol took him to the far edge of the property at 3:15 p.m., leaving a 15-minute window before he circled back. The security cameras had a blind spot near the cliff path down to the beach. The lock on the kitchen door used a 4-digit code, 0814. August 14th. The night they met at the gala. He'd programmed the date of her trap into every system on this island. That's who he was. Amara lay in bed next to him that night, her mind running calculations while her body stayed perfectly still. His arm was draped across her waist, even in sleep. Possessive. Protective. The same thing, she was realizing, depending on which side of the bars you stood on. She traced the numbers in her mind. 0814. 8014. Her escape route. Her only escape route. But there was something else. Something she'd heard Marcus mention on a phone call, when he thought she was asleep. Something about the contract. About her job at Atlas Global. About how it was ending in 9 weeks. 9 weeks until her visa expired. 9 weeks until she'd have to leave the country anyway. Unless she was still pregnant. Unless he'd engineered something even more complicated than she realized. She looked at his sleeping face and realized. She didn't even know what his endgame was. She didn't know if he planned to keep her trapped forever, or if this was all temporary. She didn't know if she was carrying a baby or a chain. And worst of all, she wasn't sure which one she was hoping for. Amara just realized something that made her blood run cold. Every lock, every code, every camera angle. Marcus has built this island like a puzzle he's solved 1,000 times before. But it's what she overheard that changes everything. There's a contract. There's a deadline. And there are only 9 weeks until something happens that will either give her freedom or trap her forever. What she doesn't realize yet is that Marcus isn't just holding her captive because he's obsessed. He's holding her captive because someone else is coming for her. Someone who wants to use her just as much as he does. And they're already watching. This isn't just about 2 people anymore. If you felt that shift, that moment when you realized Amara's being hunted from both sides, you need to subscribe right now. Because the people coming for her are worse than Marcus. And she has no idea they exist. The walls are closing in. And she's too busy studying guard rotations to see the real trap being set. Subscribe so you don't miss the moment an unmarked car appears at Jeju Island. And everything changes. This story is about to get so much darker. Drop a comment. If you were in Amara's position, would you try to escape? Or would you use this time to figure out why people are hunting you? What would you do? The truth about why she was brought to Seoul is coming. And it's going to destroy everything. 5 days into the fortress. Amara stood on the wraparound deck watching the East China Sea crash against black volcanic rocks, and realized she was suffocating on tenderness. Marcus had been perfect. Too perfect. Coffee made exactly how she liked it. Dinners prepared with care. His hand always finding the small of her back when they walked. His eyes always tracking her like she was the only thing that mattered. It was making her sick. Stop, she said. He was behind her. He was always behind her now, and he stilled immediately. Stop what? This. She turned to face him. All of it. The coffee. The dinners. The way you look at me like I'm something precious when you literally trapped me in this place. The sun was setting behind him, and for a moment, she could barely see his face. I need something real from you, she continued. Not about your syndicate. Not about your enemies. Not about how much you love me. I need something that's just you. The version of you that exists before you decided to become whatever this is. He didn't move. Didn't speak. For a long moment, it felt like she'd broken something. Then he walked past her to the railing. His hands gripped the metal so hard his knuckles went white. I was 8 years old, he said quietly. And everything changed. My mother used to bring me here, Marcus continued. His voice so low she had to move closer to hear it. Before everything fell apart. She'd rent a small house in Siaguapo every summer, And we'd pretend. We'd pretend my father didn't exist. That his debts didn't exist. That the men who came looking for payment didn't exist. Amara watched his profile against the orange sky. She'd never seen him like this. Exposed. Cracking open. She made tangerine juice from the local farms. Real juice, not the bottled kind. Just fruit and a knife in her hands. His voice wavered. Just barely. And while I drank it, she'd tell me stories about the Hyo. The Hyo? Amara whispered. Women divers. Korean women who held their breath for minutes and dove deeper than anyone thought possible. They weren't afraid of the darkness. They weren't afraid of anything. He turned to look at her. My mother said that's what I needed to become. Strong. Fearless. Never dependent on anyone. Amara felt something shift in her chest. She was teaching me how to survive, Marcus said. Teaching me how to never be like my father. Never weak. Never the kind of man whose mistakes destroy the people he loves. What happened to her? Amara asked, though part of her already knew the answer wasn't going to be kind. Marcus's jaw clenched. His debts caught up with us. The men who were looking for payment finally found us. My mother tried to protect me. She put herself between them and me, told them to take her if they wanted, but to leave me alone. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. She died, Amara said. She died, he confirmed. And I swore that I would never be weak like my father. Never let anyone I cared about pay for my mistakes. I'd become the kind of man nobody could touch. Nobody could threaten. Nobody could use. He turned back to the ocean. So I built an empire. Controlled every variable. Eliminated every threat. Became the monster in other people's nightmares so nobody could ever hurt me the way they hurt her. Amara felt the pieces clicking into place. The fortress. The guards. The obsessive control. The way he watched her like she might vanish if he looked away for even a moment. He wasn't just traumatized. He was terrified. And then you showed up, he said, still not looking at her. Walking into that gala in a red dress like you were walking into my life on purpose. You looked at me like I was a man, not a monster. Like I was worth saving. Amara's breath caught. I knew what you were, Marcus continued, and now he did turn to face her. From the very first night. I had you investigated before we even spoke. I knew your name, your background, where you came from, why you came to Seoul. It felt like a punch. You knew. I knew you were a vulnerability, an exploitable weakness. His eyes found hers, and they were filled with something raw, something that looked like desperation. And I fell for you anyway, because for the first time since my mother died, someone looked at me like my darkness wasn't everything. Like there was something underneath that was worth loving. He stepped closer. I couldn't let you leave, he said. I would have survived poverty, violence, betrayal. But losing you? That would have broken something I can't rebuild. And I'd already been shattered once. The wind whipped around them, carrying salt and something else. The weight of confession. The danger of vulnerability. So you trapped me, Amara said, but it didn't sound like an accusation anymore. It sounded like understanding. Yes. No scam. No epaleji. Just brutal honesty. Because the alternative was losing you. He reached for her, and she should have pulled away. Instead, she let him. His hand cupped her face with a gentleness that contradicted everything he'd just told her. His thumb traced her cheekbone like she was made of something fragile that might shatter. I'm not asking you to forgive me, he said. I'm asking you to understand me. I do understand you, she whispered. That's the worst part. I understand exactly why you trapped me. And that understanding is more dangerous than your love. He kissed her then. Not possessive. Not violent. Just slow and deep and honest in a way that made her realize. This man would burn down the world to keep her safe. And she was starting to believe that maybe that wasn't the worst thing. They walked on the black sand beach as the sun disappeared below the horizon. Amara's feet sank into the volcanic grains. Her hand stayed in his. Tae and Min were stationed at opposite ends of the beach, far enough to give them privacy, but close enough to intervene if she ran. She could run right now. She could break his hand and sprint toward the rocks. She could try to climb the cliff path in the darkness. She could probably make it at least 2 miles before the guards caught her. But she didn't. Instead, she studied Marcus's face in the fading light. The shadows under his eyes. The tension in his jaw from sleepless nights spent protecting her from threats he wouldn't name. The way he held her hand like it was the most important thing in the world. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked. "Because you asked for something real," he said. "And this is the most real thing I have. My pain. My broken places. The parts of me that built this fortress and trapped you inside it." Amara realized something terrifying in that moment. She believed him. Not about the trap being right. Not about his methods being justified. But about the love being genuine. About his obsession being rooted in real, devastating trauma. She was starting to understand him. And understanding him was more dangerous than hating him. As the sun dipped lower, Amara's strategic mind kicked back in. She filed away new information. He had weaknesses now. A story. A point of origin for his obsession. If she played this right, she could use his vulnerability against him. She could make him trust her even more. She could use that trust to escape. But her heart was already 2 steps ahead, whispering dangerous things. What if his love was real? What if his obsession came from a place of genuine terror? What if the fortress wasn't just a prison but a shelter he'd built against a world that had already stolen everything from him? What if staying was the only choice that made sense? The guards watched from their positions. The ocean crashed against the rocks. Marcus held her close, his chin resting on her shoulder, his breathing steady like he'd finally found something solid to hold on to. And Amara realized. She was standing at the edge of something. A choice she wasn't ready to make. A truth she wasn't prepared to face. She could escape tomorrow. She had the codes. She had the patterns. She had the vulnerability to exploit. But did she want to? That was the question that terrified her more than anything. Marcus just gave Amara something more dangerous than love. He gave her context. Now she understands why he's obsessed. Now she sees the little boy inside the monster. And now she's realizing that understanding him might be the thing that keeps her trapped forever. But here's the problem. She's not the only one watching. There are people on the mainland who've been monitoring this island. People who know exactly what Marcus is hiding. People who know about the baby. People who've been waiting for the perfect moment to make their move. And that moment is coming faster than either of them realize. Amara doesn't know it yet, but her phone conversation with her best friend 3 weeks ago didn't go unnoticed. That "I'm fine, don't worry about me" message she sent? Someone intercepted it. Someone documented it. Someone is building a case against Marcus, and she's going to be the centerpiece of their plan. The fortress is about to be breached. But not by someone she trusts. Not by someone who loves her. If you felt that shift, that moment where you realized Amara's emotional walls are cracking just as fast as Marcus's armor, you need to subscribe right now. Because the real danger isn't inside the fortress. It's coming from outside. Subscribe and don't miss the moment an unmarked vehicle appears at the gate, and Amara realizes that Marcus's fortress can't protect her from what's coming next. The people hunting her make Marcus look like a protector. Drop a comment. At what point does understanding someone become a prison of its own? Would you escape Marcus now? Or are you starting to believe his love might be worth the cage? The walls are about to come down. And when they do, Amara will have to choose between the monster she's learning to love and the system that constructed her entire existence. Trust me, this choice is going to destroy you. The bedroom door closed at 5:47 a.m. Amara heard it from across the penthouse, the sound of Marcus leaving, his car pulling away, the gates opening and closing, the sound of freedom being handed to her on a plate of coincidence. Except it wasn't coincidence. She'd been watching his patterns for 2 weeks, waiting for this exact moment. Tay and Min always left with him on business calls to Seoul. That left only skeleton crew security. 2 guards for 47 acres of property that suddenly felt enormous. Her heart was already beating too fast. She lay in the dark for 10 minutes, counting her breaths. 10 breaths. 20. 30. Making sure Marcus's car was really gone. making sure she wasn't walking into some test he'd designed to see if she'd betray him. Then she moved. Dark jeans. Black sweater despite the mild Jeju weather. She needed to blend into the shadows, not stand out against the stone. She twisted her curls into a tight bun, pulled so tight her scalp burned. Every detail mattered. Every second counted. Her passport was in her back pocket. The one thing Marcus hadn't confiscated because he didn't think she'd actually try. He was wrong. The floorboards in the hallway creaked. Just barely. Just enough for her to freeze like a deer caught in headlights. Her entire body going rigid. She waited. 30 seconds. A minute. No sound. No movement. No guards responding to a noise that probably didn't even register on whatever surveillance system Marcus had wired through this place. Her hands trembled as she moved toward the kitchen. The back door that led to the beach path was locked, but she'd memorized the code. Weeks of watching Marcus punch it in. Weeks of studying his hands as they moved across the keypad like it was second nature to him. August 14th. The night they met. He'd branded the date of her capture into every lock on this island. How possessive did you have to be to tattoo your obsession into security systems? She punched in the code. The lock clicked open. And suddenly she was outside. The morning air was cool against her skin. The ocean smelled like salt and escape. The path stretched before her, winding down through volcanic rock and wild grass toward the black sand beach. Beyond that, she could see the main road in the distance. 2 miles. That's all she needed. 2 miles and she was in public. 2 miles and she could flag down a car. 2 miles and Marcus's fortress became just another property on an island he no longer owned her on. Her bare feet hit the stone path. Stupid, she should have worn shoes. And she started moving. Not running yet. Walking fast. Strategic. If the perimeter guard looked back, she wanted to be just another shadow. But when she got to the rock formation that cut off the view of the house, she ran. Her feet pounded against stone. Her breath came in gasps that had nothing to do with exertion, and everything to do with adrenaline. Every second she expected to hear shouting. Alarms. The sound of guards realizing what was happening. But there was only the ocean, and her own heartbeat, and the freedom that was suddenly, impossibly close. The black sand slowed her down. Her feet sank into the volcanic grains, and every step felt like moving through molasses. But she pushed through it, her eyes fixed on the road ahead. So close. She was so close she could feel it. The weight of her passport in her pocket. The salt air in her lungs. The reality of escape. A few more minutes and Marcus's gravity would lose its pull on her. She made it off the beach and onto the concrete of the public access parking area. Her breathing was ragged. Her heart was slamming against her ribs so hard she thought it might break through. And that's when she saw it. A black SUV was parked at the edge of the lot. Engine running. Windows tinted so dark she couldn't see inside. It looked expensive. Official. Like it belonged to someone who had authority. For a wild moment, Amara thought about flagging it down. About begging whoever was inside for help. About asking them to drive her to the airport. To call the police. To get her as far away from this island as possible. Something made her hesitate. The way the SUV was positioned, blocking the main road out. The way it had clearly been waiting. The precision of it. The planning. The passenger door opened. A woman stepped out. Director Patterson looked exactly like what she was. Someone used to being in charge. Mid-40s. Blonde hair pulled back in a severe bun that looked like it had been fashioned with military precision. A crisp pantsuit that screamed government. She studied Amara like she was a puzzle that had finally solved itself. Amara-chun? Her English was American. Unaccented. Professional. Relief flooded through Amara so fast it made her dizzy. Yes. Yes, that's me. I need help. I need to get off this island before. Your friend Maya reported you missing 3 weeks ago, Patterson interrupted. Her voice calm in a way that suggested this entire situation was exactly what she'd expected. She filed a report with the U.S. Embassy in Seoul. Told them you sent a distress message, and then disappeared. Amara's eyes filled with tears. Maya. Her best friend. The one person who hadn't forgotten about her. Oh, thank God, Amara breathed. Thank God someone was looking. I thought no one was coming. Patterson's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. We've been coming for weeks, she said. We've just been waiting for the right moment. Something in Patterson's tone made Amara's relief curdle into unease. How did you know I'd be here right now? Amara asked slowly. How did you know exactly when to be waiting? Patterson took a step closer, and that's when Amara noticed the bulge under her jacket. A gun. Patterson was carrying a gun like this was a tactical operation. We've been conducting surveillance on this property since your friend filed her report, Patterson said clinically. Monitoring communications, tracking movement patterns, waiting for an opportunity. She pulled out a tablet from the back seat of the SUV and turned it toward Amara. When we saw the reduced guard presence this morning, only 2 guards instead of 4, we knew you might try. Your friend's intel about Marcus's schedule was invaluable. Amara looked at the tablet. What she saw made the world tilt sideways. Surveillance footage. Her phone records. Photographs of the property. Maps with security positions marked. Everything documented. Everything cataloged. Everything she'd done and said for the last 3 weeks had been watched, recorded, analyzed. You've been monitoring me, Amara whispered. We've been protecting you, Patterson corrected. Atlas Global Consulting stopped receiving your weekly reports 3 weeks ago. That triggered protocols. That's when we escalated surveillance. The words didn't make sense. What reports? I don't work for Atlas Global. I'm a consultant. Amara's mind was racing, trying to connect dots that didn't match up. Wait, what are you talking about? Patterson's expression shifted into something harder. More clinical. Let's go somewhere we can talk properly, Patterson said. We need to move before Marcus realizes you're gone. We have maybe 20 minutes before his security system alerts him to the breach. I don't understand what you're saying, Amara said, but her voice was shaking because part of her already did understand. Part of her had already started seeing the outline of a truth that was about to destroy everything she thought she knew about herself. Patterson reached for her arm. Come on. We need to go. Now. Amara took a step toward the SUV. Then she stopped. Wait, she said. Just wait. Tell me what you're talking about. What protocols? What reports? Patterson's eyes hardened with impatience. We don't have time. Tell me. For a moment, they stood there on that concrete parking lot overlooking the black sand beach. The ocean behind them. The island behind them. Everything Amara thought she understood about her life hanging in the balance. Patterson took a breath. You were recruited 9 months ago, she said quietly. Your entire life and soul was constructed. Your job at Atlas Global. Your apartment. Your reason for being in South Korea. All of it was designed. You were selected from a pool of candidates specifically because you had no family ties, no romantic attachments, no one who would miss you if you disappeared. The words landed like individual bombs. Selected. Constructed. Designed. Disappeared. Your mission was to get close to Marcus Kong. To gather intelligence on his operations. To identify his vulnerabilities. To become someone he would trust. Amara's legs felt weak. I didn't know. I swear, I didn't know what I was doing. We know you didn't, Patterson said, and her voice was almost gentle. That's what made you so effective. An asset who doesn't know they're an asset can't give themselves away. You were genuine with him. That's why he fell for you. The irony hit Amara like a punch. Marcus thought he'd trapped her. Marcus thought he'd engineered her existence. Marcus thought he'd controlled every variable. But someone else had controlled it first. Someone else had put her in his orbit. Someone else had designed their meeting. Someone else had orchestrated every moment of the last 3 months. And Marcus had fallen for the construct. Or maybe he'd known the whole time, and this was all a game within a game. She didn't know which possibility terrified her more. Come with me, Patterson said, opening the passenger door wider. We'll debrief you. Get your testimony. Put you in witness protection. You'll be safe. Safe. The word didn't mean anything anymore. Amara stood between 2 choices. Behind her was the fortress. Marcus. The man who'd trapped her but loved her, who'd obsessed over her but protected her, who'd taken her choice away but had promised to let her choose every single day. In front of her was Patterson, the government. People who'd constructed her existence, used her without her knowledge, turned her into a weapon without her consent. And as she looked at both of them, the man who'd trapped her with love, and the woman who'd trapped her with lies, Amara realized something terrible. She wasn't free either way. She'd never been free. Amara just discovered that her entire life was a lie. Not Marcus's lie. A bigger lie. A government lie. Someone recruited her 9 months ago and sent her directly into Marcus's world. Someone watched her fall in love with a man who was supposed to be her target. Someone turned her into a weapon without her knowledge. And now they want her to testify against him. But here's what Amara doesn't know yet. Marcus already knows. He's known from the beginning. He investigated her before they even met. He knows exactly who she was sent to spy on him for. And the man who just left the island this morning? He didn't really leave. He's been watching her run. Watching her reach that SUV. Waiting to see if she'd choose freedom or stay trapped. And the choice she's about to make is going to change everything. Because when Marcus arrives at that beach access point, he's not coming to rescue her. He's coming to claim her. And he's bringing people with guns. The question isn't anymore, can Amara escape? The question is, who will she choose when she realizes she's caught between a man who loves her obsessively and a system that used her strategically? If you felt that shift, that moment when you realized Amara's been trapped this whole time and didn't even know it, you need to subscribe right now. Because what happens next on that beach is going to determine the rest of her life. Subscribe so you don't miss the moment Marcus arrives and Amara has to choose between two cages. A cage built by obsession. A cage built by betrayal. And she gets to pick which one she lives in. Drop a comment. If you were Amara, would you choose Marcus or would you choose freedom? Because I'm telling you right now, there is no freedom option. There is only a choice between who controls you. This is where the story gets real. This is where Amara stops being a victim and becomes a player in her own game. Subscribe. You're not going to want to miss what she chooses. The tablet glowed in Patterson's hands like evidence of a crime Amara didn't commit. Let me show you something, Patterson said, her voice too calm for the world that was collapsing around Amara's feet. This is your personnel file. The screen lit up. Amara-chan. DOB. 1997. Status. Active asset. Classification. Level 2 operative. Below that were files. Dozens of them. Hundreds. Personnel evaluation dated March 14th, 6 months before Amara had even seen the job posting for Atlas Global. Psychological evaluation detailing her tendency toward isolation, her lack of family ties, her capacity to form attachments quickly but break them cleanly. Evaluated in April. Before she had the interview. Background check so thorough it made her skin crawl. Every school she'd attended. Every job she'd held. Every relationship she'd ever had was documented and analyzed and filed away like she was a thing to be studied, not a person to be protected. This can't be real, Amara whispered. It's very real, Patterson said. She swiped across the screen, pulling up more files. You were selected from a pool of 47 candidates. We needed someone specific. Someone without ties. Someone intelligent but compliant. Someone who could infiltrate Cho Marcus Kang's world without raising suspicion. Amara felt the ground shifting beneath her feet. I didn't know, she said. I applied for that job. I went to the interview. I was hired fair. You were guided, Patterson corrected. The job posting was placed where we knew you'd find it. The interview was conducted by our people. The hiring was predetermined. Every step of your placement in Seoul was orchestrated. She pulled up another file. Atlas Global Consulting. Property of United States Central Intelligence Agency. Front Opération 2019. Amara's voice came out hollow. That's not a real company? It's very real, Patterson said. It just doesn't exist for the reasons you think it does. Its existence is to place assets in strategic positions. Assets like you. Assets we can use to gather intelligence on targets like Marcus. Your job, Patterson continued, was to get close to him, to learn his routines, to identify his vulnerabilities, to become someone he would trust, someone he might confide in. Patterson swiped through more files. Photographs of Amara and Marcus together, at restaurants, walking on the beach, the night they met at the gala. All documented, all recorded. Every conversation you had with your supervisor, Patterson said, was an intelligence gathering session. Every report you filed thinking it was routine consulting work was actually feeding us data on his operations, his associates, his money flow, his vulnerabilities. Amara thought back to her supervisor. The casual questions that never felt urgent. The suggestions about which events to attend. The restaurants to visit. The people to introduce him to. She'd thought those were just helpful suggestions. She'd been feeding information without knowing it. Playing a role she didn't even understand she was in. I was a spy, Amara said flatly. You were an asset, Patterson corrected. An unknowing asset is far more valuable than a knowing one. Because you were genuine with him. Your emotions were real. Your responses weren't calculated. That's what made you so effective. That's why he fell for you. You constructed my entire existence, Amara said. And her voice was shaking because she finally understood the full scope of what had been done to her. My job. My apartment. My reason for being in Korea. All of it was. I wasn't even a real person to you. I was a tool. You were an asset, Patterson repeated, like that word was supposed to make it better. Like categorizing her as something other than human made the violation less severe. Patterson's voice softened fractionally, but her eyes remained clinical. An asset who doesn't know they're an asset can't give themselves away. If we told you what you were being sent to do, you would have struggled with it. You would have felt guilty. You would have sabotaged the operation with your conscience. But because you didn't know, you were perfect. You were authentic. Amara felt bile rising in her throat. So while Marcus was trapping me, she said slowly, you were already controlling me. We were protecting you, Patterson said. Getting you positioned to expose a dangerous criminal. Getting you intel so we could take him down. And what happens now? Amara's voice was hollow. You put me in witness protection? Give me another constructed identity? I spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder, running from people, pretending to be someone else. Patterson opened the passenger door wider. We give you safety, she said. We testify against Marcus. We dismantle his operation. We build you a new life where no one can hurt you. No more surveillance. No more being controlled. You get to actually be free. Free. The word meant nothing anymore. Amara realized something in that moment with perfect, devastating clarity. She wasn't choosing between freedom and captivity. She was choosing between two types of cages. One built by a man who loved her obsessively, who'd trapped her but been honest about the trap. One built by a system that had used her strategically, that had turned her into a weapon without her knowledge. Both wanted to control her. Both wanted to own her. The only difference was the methodology. Marcus had taken her choice away. Patterson had pretended to give her choice while building her entire reality without her consent. If I go with you, Amara said quietly, I'll be in witness protection forever, won't I? Not for a year. Not for 5 years. Forever. Because Marcus will hunt for me. And the moment I slip up, the moment I make contact with someone from my old life, he'll find me. Patterson didn't answer. That was answer enough. And if I stay with Marcus, Amara continued, I'm trapped in his fortress. Watched constantly. Controlled completely. But at least he's honest about what he's doing. He deliberately got you pregnant to trap you, Patterson said harshly. That's not love. That's pathology. And you deliberately recruited me without my knowledge to use me as a weapon against him. Amara shot back. What's that? Then she heard it. The sound of an engine on the coastal road. Not a normal speed. Too fast. Too urgent. The kind of speed someone drives when they're racing against time. Patterson's head snapped toward the sound. He knows, she said. Somehow he. The security system. He must have been alerted. The black Mercedes came into view, skidding around the corner like it was defying physics. It screeched to a stop at the edge of the beach access, and 3 doors opened simultaneously. Marcus emerged from the back seat, Tay and Min flanking him on either side, all 3 moving with deadly precision, all 3 looking like they'd come for war. But it was Marcus's face that made Amara's chest crack open. He looked devastated. Not angry. Not shocked. Devastated in the way someone looks when they've had their worst fear confirmed. His eyes locked on hers across the parking lot, and the betrayal in them was a living thing. Breathing. Bleeding. You ran, he said. The words hung in the air like an accusation and a wound all at once. His hand moved to his back. When it came forward, he was holding a gun. Sleek. Black. The kind of weapon someone carries when they're prepared to use it. You ran from me, he said, his voice dropping to something dangerous. To them. Patterson's hand moved toward her jacket. Toward her own weapon. But Marcus was faster. His gun was up and aimed before she could clear leather. His stance was perfect. Military trained. This was a man who'd killed before. A man who would kill again. I wouldn't, Marcus said softly, and his voice was cold as winter steel. My men have your driver in their sights. You shoot me, they shoot him. Your backup is 20 minutes away. We all know how this ends if you force my hand. Amara stood frozen between them. Literally caught between 2 forces that both wanted to use her. Control her. Own her for different reasons that somehow felt exactly the same. Patterson's jaw clenched. Amara, Patterson said without taking her eyes off Marcus. Come here. You're an American citizen. I can protect you from him. She's carrying my child, Marcus countered, his voice possessive and raw in a way that made Amara's skin prickle with equal parts dread and recognition. She's mine, and I don't care what government agency you represent. You're not taking her. Yours. Patterson laughed, but there was no humor in it. She's not property, Mr. Kong. She's not your possession. She has rights. We have evidence that you've been holding her against her will, that you deliberately got her pregnant without consent. That's reproductive coercion. That's a crime. And that's when Amara did something neither of them expected. She spoke. I never said I didn't consent. The words came out of her mouth before she could think about what they meant, before she could consider the implications. Both Patterson and Marcus froze. What? Patterson's professional mask slipped for the first time, showing something underneath. Surprise. Doubt. He told me what he was doing, Amara said, her voice steady now, certain in a way that terrified her. He told me he'd stopped using protection. He told me he'd done it deliberately. He gave me the information. I chose to stay. You were coerced, Patterson said. You were isolated. He created a dependency. And what did you do? Amara turned to face Patterson fully, and something inside her chest was cracking wide open. Years of being controlled by people who claimed to know better. Years of being a game piece on someone else's board. Years of smiling and nodding while her entire life was constructed around her. What have you done to me, Director Patterson? Patterson's expression hardened. You made me into a weapon without my knowledge, Amara continued, her voice cracking. You constructed my entire life. You put me in his path deliberately. You turned me into something I never agreed to be. You took my choice before I even knew I had one. We were trying to bring down a dangerous criminal. By using me. Amara's voice rose. By lying to me. By making me complicit in something I didn't consent to. At least Marcus was honest about what he wanted from me. Patterson's face went cold and bureaucratic. You're confused, Patterson said. He's manipulated you. He's isolated you. He's created a dependency. What's the difference? Amara shot back. Between his cage and yours? Because from where I'm standing, Director Patterson, you both want exactly the same thing. She paused. You both want to control me. The silence that followed was deafening. Even the waves seemed to quiet, waiting for what came next. Marcus hadn't moved. His gun was still trained on Patterson, but something in his expression had shifted. His eyes were locked on Amara with an intensity that made her skin burn. hope and disbelief and something desperate warring across his features. Patterson stepped toward the SUV. "Last chance," she said, her voice clipped and professional. "Come with me now. Testify against him. We'll put you in witness protection. You and the baby. New identity. New life. Safety guaranteed." Amara looked at the SUV. At the promise of escape. At another constructed life waiting to be lived. Then she looked at Marcus. At the man who'd trapped her but loved her. At the monster who'd obsessed over her, but protected her. At the only person who'd ever been honest about what he wanted from her. She stood on that beach with 3 miles of ocean behind her, 2 impossible choices in front of her, and the realization that she'd never actually been free. Not with Marcus. Not with the CIA. Not ever. The question wasn't anymore. Could she escape? The question was, which cage would she choose? And as she looked between them, the man with the gun pointed at a government operative, and the woman representing the system that had weaponized her existence, Amara understood something that would change everything. She was about to make a choice that would define the rest of her life. And there was no right answer. Only the one she could live with. Amara just realized she was never free. Not with Marcus. Not with the CIA. Both of them have been controlling her this entire time. Marcus trapped her with love. The CIA trapped her with lies. But here's what's about to happen. She's standing on a beach with a man pointing a gun at a government operative. Tay and Min are armed and ready. Patterson's backup is 20 minutes away. And Amara is about to make a choice that will either A. Make her a fugitive running from the entire U.S. government. B. Make her a traitor to the only man who's ever been honest with her. C. Something nobody sees coming. The next 7 minutes of this story will determine whether Amara survives this nightmare or becomes part of it permanently. Because when you're caught between 2 equally dangerous forces, when you're trapped in a situation where both sides want you dead if you don't cooperate, the only power you have left is the power to choose which lie you're willing to live with. If you felt that moment, when Amara looked between Marcus and Patterson and realized there is no good option, you need to subscribe right now. Because what happens next will destroy you emotionally. The moment Amara opens her mouth, the moment she says the words that will determine her fate, everything changes. Not just for her. For everyone on that beach. Subscribe and don't miss the moment she chooses. And trust me when I say, her choice is going to haunt you. Drop a comment. If you were Amara, caught between a man who loves you obsessively and a system that used you strategically, which cage would you choose? Because there is no escape route. There is only choice between 2 prisons. This is where the story reaches its breaking point. This is where Amara stops being a victim and becomes the architect of her own fate. Subscribe. What happened next will change everything you thought you understood about love, freedom, and what it means to be truly trapped. The choice is coming. And it's going to devastate you. Amara, come here. Patterson's voice was authoritative. Clinical. The voice of someone used to being obeyed. You're an American citizen. You have rights. I can protect you from him. She extended her hand like Amara was a child who needed to be led back to safety. Marcus's grip tightened on his gun. She's carrying my child, he said, and his voice was possessive in a way that made Amara's skin crawl. She's mine. And I don't care what government agency you represent. You're not taking her. Yours. Patterson's laugh was sharp and brittle. She's not your possession, Mr. Kong. She's not your property. She's a woman with autonomy, with rights, with what? Marcus cut her off. With the freedom you gave her? The freedom you constructed her entire life around? You don't get to lecture me about her rights, Director. You weaponized her. You turned her into a tool without her consent. We were protecting her, Patterson snapped. We were dismantling a criminal operation. By lying to her. The words dropped between them like stones. Marcus stepped forward, his gun still steady. You told her nothing. You built her existence around a lie. And now you're offering her another constructed identity in exchange for her testimony. That's not protection. That's enslavement with better PR. Amara watched them argue about her like she wasn't standing there. Like she wasn't a person capable of making her own decisions. like she was a prize to be claimed rather than a human with agency. And something inside her snapped. Stop. It wasn't loud, but it cut through everything. Both Marcus and Patterson froze. Amara stepped forward, and suddenly she was no longer standing between them. She was standing against them. Both of you. Stop talking about me like I'm not here. Stop talking about me like I'm something to be owned, controlled, or protected. Her voice was steady now. Furious. Terrifyingly clear. I'm not your property, Marcus. And I'm not your asset, Director Patterson. I'm a person. And I deserve to make my own choice about what happens to me. Patterson lowered her extended hand. Marcus's gun wavered slightly, not toward Amara, but in confusion. You made me into a weapon, Amara continued, turning to face Patterson directly. You recruited me without my knowledge. You constructed my entire existence. My job, my apartment, my reason for being in Seoul. All of it was designed by you. All of it was a lie. You didn't protect me. You used me. You turned me into something I never agreed to be, and you did it while smiling and calling it a mission. Patterson's professional mask cracked. Amara. And you. Amara turned to Marcus, and her eyes were blazing. You trapped me. You deliberately got me pregnant to keep me here. You took away my choice. You imprisoned me in a fortress and called it protection. You lied to me, and then when I found out, you justified it with trauma and pain and love that feels suffocating. Marcus lowered his gun. But here's what I understand now, Amara continued. And her voice was breaking because she was speaking truth for the first time in months. You're both doing the same thing. You both want to control me. You both want to own me. You both want to decide what's best for me without asking. The only difference is that Marcus is honest about it. He told me he trapped me, Amara said. He didn't hide it. He didn't pretend it was something else. He said, I got you pregnant to keep you here. That's the truth. Awful truth. Possessive truth. But truth. She looked at Patterson. You lied. You built an entire reality and told me it was real. You made me complicit in something I didn't consent to. You turned me into a weapon and called it protection. You're offering me witness protection now, another new identity, another constructed life, another cage just with different bars. That's not fair, Patterson said coldly. We were dismantling a criminal operation. We were. Using me, Amara finished. You were using me. And now you want my testimony so you can put him in prison and give me another life where I'm running, hiding, looking over my shoulder forever. Is that the freedom you're offering? Because that sounds like a different kind of cage. Patterson's jaw clenched. So what are you saying? She asked quietly. Amara looked back at Marcus. At the gun hanging at his side now. At the devastation in his eyes that she'd run from him. At the man who'd trapped her, and was now listening to her speak, without interrupting. I'm saying, Amara began slowly, working through the terrible logic of it all, that I'm trapped either way. With you, Director Patterson, I'm trapped in witness protection, constructing yet another identity, running from the CIA and from Marcus and from everyone I've ever known. That's not freedom. That's just a different kind of prison. She paused. With Marcus, I'm trapped in that fortress. Watched constantly. Controlled carefully. But at least he's honest about what he's doing. At least he admits he won't let me go. At least when he takes my choice away. I know that's what he's doing. Patterson stepped back toward the SUV. Come with me now, Amara. Please. I'm offering you a way out. You're offering me another cage, Amara said. A bigger one. A more sophisticated one. A cage that looks like freedom but feels like running forever. And what about your baby? Patterson's voice was sharp. What kind of life will you give your child living with a crime lord? What example are you setting? It was a good question. It was also a weapon, and they both knew it. Amara's hand went to her stomach instinctively. My baby's father, she said quietly, is willing to dismantle his entire empire to be with us. My baby's father has already chosen to walk away from everything he built. My baby's father loves so hard it's possessive, but that love includes protecting my child with his life. She paused. Your protection? Your protection means a new identity, a new name, a new lie. How is that better? How is that safety? Patterson's face hardened into something cold and bureaucratic. You're confused, she said flatly. He's manipulated you. He's isolated you. He's created a dependency. What have you done? Amara's voice rose. What have you done that's different from him? You manipulated my entire existence. You isolated me from my real life by construction. You created a dependency by making me believe my only option was to serve your mission. Amara stepped closer to Patterson. At least Marcus is a monster I can see. You're a monster in a suit calling herself a protector. And I'm done being used by either of you without my consent. Patterson extended her hand one more time. Last chance, she said. Walk away from him. Get in this vehicle. Let us help you. Because if you stay with him, Amara, if you choose to go back to that island, you're making a choice you can't undo. You're giving up your freedom, your future, your ability to ever leave. Amara looked at the SUV. She thought about witness protection, about another constructed life, about running forever, about never being able to contact her best friend, about spending the rest of her days looking over her shoulder. Then she looked at Marcus. She thought about the fortress, about the guards, about being watched constantly, about being trapped. But she also thought about that moment on the beach when he'd told her about his mother, about the tenderness in his voice when he talked about her pregnancy, about the way he held her at night, like she was the most precious thing in the world, about the fact that he was willing to dismantle everything he'd built just to give her a chance at a real life. And she realized something. There was no good choice here. There was only the choice that felt true. I'm staying, Amara said. The words fell like stones into still water, rippling out in waves she knew she couldn't take back. Patterson's face went cold. You're making a mistake you can't undo, Miss Thompson, she said. Maybe, Amara replied, her voice steady and certain in a way that terrified her. But it's my mistake to make. Not yours. Not the CIA's. Mine. For the first time in my entire life, it's my choice. And I choose to stay. Patterson stared at her for a long moment like she was a failed experiment. An asset that had gone rogue. A variable that wouldn't comply with the mission parameters. Then she lowered her hand. She turned back toward the SUV. This isn't over, she said, her voice clipped and final. We'll be watching. And the moment you realize what he really is, the moment you want out, we'll be there. He is what he is, Amara said quietly. And I'm choosing to be with him anyway. Patterson climbed into the driver's seat without another word. The SUV pulled away slowly, deliberately, like she was giving Amara one last chance to change her mind. Amara didn't move. Didn't run after them. Didn't waver. As the vehicle disappeared down the coastal road, taking with it her last connection to her old life, Amara felt something shift inside her chest. Not relief. Something more complicated. Finality. Marcus holstered his gun and dismissed Tay and Min with a sharp jerk of his head. The two men retreated to the Mercedes, giving them privacy but staying close enough to intervene if needed. He approached Amara slowly, like she was a wild animal that might bolt. He stopped a few feet away, and for the first time since she'd known him, he looked uncertain. Vulnerable. You chose me, he said, and his voice cracked on the words. I chose myself, Amara corrected. I chose the cage I could live with. I chose the man who's honest about his obsession over the system that lies about its protection. Marcus took another step closer. Why? The word was raw, desperate, like he couldn't believe what had just happened. Amara looked at him. At the dragon tattoo visible above his collar. At the shadows under his eyes from sleepless nights protecting her. At the hands that had killed for her, held her, trapped her, and now were waiting to see if she'd reject him. Because you're right, she whispered. The world outside is more dangerous than the fortress. Because witness protection is just another prison with better PR. Because the only person who wants to keep me alive more than they want to use me is you. Marcus closed the distance between them in 3 strides. His arms wrapped around her like a vice, pulling her against his chest so hard she could barely breathe. She felt him shaking. This dangerous, Deadly Man was shaking as he held her like she might disappear if he loosened his grip. I thought I'd lost you, he murmured against her hair, his accent thicker with emotion. When the security alert came through, when I saw you running on the cameras, I thought you'd rather risk everything than stay with me. I did risk everything, Amara whispered, pressing her face into his neck. And I'm still here. He pulled back just enough to cup her face. His dark eyes were blazing with something fierce and possessive and almost worshipful. I'm going to prove to you that you made the right choice, he said. Every day, Amara. I'm going to prove that you're not just surviving with me. You're living. Amara didn't believe him. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But when he kissed her, desperate and claiming and somehow achingly gentle, she realized something that should have terrified her but instead felt like acceptance. She'd chosen her monster. And now she had to figure out how to live with him. Behind them, the ocean crashed against the black volcanic rocks. Above them, seagulls circled like omens. Around them was the island that had become her prison and her choice. Patterson's SUV had disappeared completely, taking with it the promise of freedom. And Amara was finally, devastatingly, beginning to understand. Freedom wasn't the absence of cages. It was choosing which cage you lived in. And choosing the person who lived inside it with you. Amara just chose the monster. Not because he's good. Not because his love is healthy. Not because her choice makes sense. She chose him because she realized both options were cages, and at least his cage had someone inside who loved her enough to burn down the world to keep her safe. But here's what she doesn't know yet. Patterson isn't actually gone. She's not finished. The moment Amara is vulnerable, the moment she slips up, the CIA will be waiting. And when they come back, they won't ask nicely. They'll come with warrants and backup and every resource the United States government can throw at her. And Marcus knows it. He's already planning their escape. He's already dismantling his empire. He's already prepared to disappear with her so thoroughly that even the CIA can't find them. What happens next is the most dangerous thing either of them has done yet. They're going to run. Together. Not from love. From necessity. And on that journey, Amara is going to learn that the man she chose is capable of things she never imagined. Things that will make her question whether she made the right choice. If you felt that shift, when Amara realized she was choosing a cage, but at least it was her choice, you need to subscribe right now. Because the next part of this story spirals into darkness that will make you question everything about love, freedom, and what it means to be truly safe. Subscribe so you don't miss the moment they start running. This story is about to get so much more complicated. Drop a comment. Do you think Amara made the right choice? Or did she just trap herself forever? Because honestly, there's no right answer here. There's only the choice she can live with. This is where the story becomes real. This is where Amara stops talking about escape and starts living with consequences. Subscribe. Because what comes next will show you exactly what she's chosen. And trust me, it's going to haunt you. Marcus carried her up the beach path like she weighed nothing. His arm was locked around her waist, his other hand gripping the stone railing to steady them both as they climbed. Amara's heartbeat was still racing from the confrontation with Patterson, from the choice she'd just made, from the finality of watching that SUV disappear. There was no going back now. The fortress loomed above them, all glass and steel and the weight of his empire. But as they crossed the threshold, everything felt different. The penthouse that had felt like a prison now felt like something else. A launching point. A place to shed a life. We have 72 hours, Marcus said, and she could hear the general in his voice now. The strategist. The man who'd built an empire was now planning its destruction. After that, Patterson will escalate. More surveillance. Legal warrants. She'll come with everything she has. He released Amara and moved directly to his office, pulling up files on a massive curved monitor. Amara watched him work. Watched him navigate through networks and accounts and the intricate architecture of a criminal empire built over more than a decade. I'm liquidating everything, he said quietly. Transferring assets to shell companies in jurisdictions the CIA can't touch. Moving money through channels that don't exist on any official ledger. Amara noticed something in his voice. Not regret. Not hesitation. Relief. Why? She asked. Marcus turned to look at her. Because I don't want it anymore. I built this empire to feel safe. To make sure nobody could hurt me the way my mother was hurt. But it didn't make me safe. It made me paranoid. Made me obsessive. Made me into someone I don't want to be. He turned back to the screens. And then you showed up, and I realized something. Safety isn't about power. It's about having someone you'd burn down the world for. Someone who'd choose you even when you're offering nothing but ashes. His fingers flew across the keyboard. So I'm burning it down. All of it. I'm turning evidence over to Korean authorities in exchange for immunity. I'm walking away from the BO syndicate, and I'm disappearing. With you. To somewhere Patterson can't touch. They didn't have much to pack. Amara moved through the penthouse, and it struck her how little of it was actually hers. Clothes Marcus had bought her. A phone he'd provided. A laptop with carefully monitored access. She wasn't leaving a life. She was leaving a constructed existence. Marcus had already packed 2 large cases. Just essentials. Documents. Money. The kind of supplies someone carries when they're prepared to never return. Juno and Minsk appeared like ghosts, moving through the penthouse with military precision. They didn't ask questions. They simply executed whatever Marcus commanded. Loading the jet. Securing the exits. Preparing for departure. Where? Amara asked. New Zealand, Marcus said. Small coastal town that doesn't appear on tourist maps. Property registered under shell companies so deeply buried that even the CIA's resources can't trace it easily. Off-grid power. Satellite internet. Everything we need to disappear completely. Amara tried to imagine it. Starting a life in a place where nobody knew her. Where the only identity she had was the one Marcus built for her. But that was the whole point, wasn't it? She'd been living constructed identities her entire time in Seoul. At least this one, she was choosing. That night, Amara stood on the wraparound deck one last time. The East China Sea stretched out below her, dark and endless. The Seoul skyline glowed in the distance, burning like a funeral pyre for everything she was leaving behind. Her best friend. Her old job. The life she'd thought was real. All of it was disappearing into the darkness. She touched her stomach, feeling the slight curve that was barely visible but undeniably there. 10 weeks pregnant. A baby that was the only real thing in her entire existence. A baby that belonged to a crime lord. A baby that would grow up knowing both her parents were shaped by trauma and obsession. I'm sorry, she whispered to the life growing inside her. Not an apology for existing. An apology for the impossible situation she was being born into. Marcus appeared behind her without a sound. His hand covered hers on her stomach, and she felt the baby move against both their palms. A kick. A response. A reminder that despite everything, despite the manipulation, the obsession, the violence, they were creating something real together. I'll spend the rest of my life earning what I took from you, he said quietly. His forehead rested against her shoulder, his voice raw. The choice. The autonomy. Your future. I'll spend every day trying to deserve the fact that you're staying. Amara closed her eyes. I don't forgive you, she said, and her voice was quiet but absolute. Not yet. Maybe not ever. What you did was unforgivable. You took away my agency. You trapped me. You got me pregnant to keep me here. Those things don't disappear because you're leaving your empire. She felt him tense against her. I know, he said. But I'm choosing to stay anyway, she continued. Not because I forgive you. Not because I believe you'll change completely. But because I'm carrying your child, and she deserves to know her father. She deserves a chance at a life where she's not running from anything. She deserves parents who chose her. Marcus turned her to face him. His eyes were filled with something vulnerable and desperate. Are you staying because you love me? He asked. Or are you staying because I'm the lesser evil? Amara considered the question with brutal honesty. I don't know, she said finally. Maybe both. Maybe neither. Maybe I'm staying because I'm exhausted from running. Maybe I'm staying because the thought of another constructed identity in witness protection sounds more suffocating than the fortress. Maybe I'm staying because some small part of me believes that underneath all the obsession and control, there's a man worth fighting for. She paused. The truth is, I don't know if I'm making the right choice. But it's my choice. And that's all that matters anymore. Marcus pulled her close, and she felt him shaking again. This powerful man. This crime lord. This monster who'd built an empire and now was dismantling it. I was never going to let you go, he admitted against her hair. Even if you'd left with Patterson. Even if you'd testified against me. I would have found you. I would have killed anyone who stood between us. I would have destroyed the entire government if necessary. His arms tightened around her. That's how much you mean to me. That's how completely you've become my entire world. And I know that's terrifying. I know that's possessive and sick and everything that's wrong with me. But I can't apologize for it. The only thing I can do is give you the one thing I never thought I could. A choice to stay every single day. Not forced. Not manipulated. Just a choice. Amara didn't respond. She just held him while he held her, and the ocean crashed below, and Seoul burned in the distance, and their baby moved between them like a promise neither of them believed in yet. The private jet was waiting at Gimpo Airport. All black. Unmarked. The kind of plane that carried people who wanted to disappear. Juno had already loaded their cases. Minsk was conducting a final security sweep. The pilot was waiting in the cockpit, no questions asked. Marcus held Amara's hand as they climbed the stairs. Once we board this plane, he said quietly, everything changes. Seoul disappears. Your old life disappears. You're not Amara-chan anymore. You're not an American consultant. You're not a CIA asset. You're just mine. Don't say that, Amara said. Say I'm mine. Say I belong to myself. Marcus smiled sadly. You'll always be yours. But you'll also be mine. Both things are true. Both things will always be true. He was right, and they both knew it. The cabin was sparse. Comfortable but sterile. 2 seats facing the panoramic window. Amara chose one and looked back at the city they were leaving behind. Seoul. Where she'd met Marcus. Where she'd been trapped. Where she'd made the choice that would define the rest of her life. Juno closed the cabin door. The engines came to life. As the plane lifted off the tarmac, Amara watched Seoul fall away beneath them. The glittering skyline became points of light. The island became a speck. The entire world she'd lived in for 3 months became something she could hold in the palm of her hand. Marcus sat beside her, his hand finding hers in the darkness. Are you scared? He asked. Terrified, Amara admitted. Of you. Of what's coming. Of making a mistake that costs our daughter her future. Of the fact that Patterson is probably watching us right now, tracking this plane, building her case. She is, Marcus confirmed. But she can't touch us once we land. New Zealand has extradition treaties, but my lawyers will make it impossible for her to prove anything. The evidence I'm turning over to Korean authorities will create enough legal chaos that she'll be too busy defending herself to chase us. He paused. We might have bought ourselves a life, Amara. A real life. Away from all of this. Amara looked at him in the darkness of the cabin. At the man who'd trapped her, but was now letting her go with only the promise of returning to him. At the man who'd built an empire and was burning it down. At the man who'd become her entire world without her permission. What kind of life? She asked. What happens when we land? Marcus's thumb traced circles on her hand. We build one, he said simply. From nothing. No names. No history. No empire. Just you, me, and our daughter. We build something real for the first time in our lives. Amara watched Seoul disappear into the darkness below. She thought about Patterson, who would wake up to find Amara gone. About Maya, who would never know what really happened to her best friend. About the life she was leaving behind that had been constructed for her anyway. She thought about the fortress on Jeju Island, now empty and abandoned. She thought about the baby growing inside her, who would be born in a new country, with a new name, to parents who'd found each other through obsession and manipulation, and impossible love. Marcus had his head back against the seat, his hand still holding hers, his breathing evening out into something close to sleep. Amara realized she wasn't afraid anymore. Not of the future. Not of the darkness. Not even of the man sleeping beside her with his hand locked around hers like she might disappear if he let go. She was afraid of one thing and one thing only. That she'd made the right choice. Because if she had made the right choice, if choosing Marcus was actually the best option available to her, then what did that say about the world? What did that say about the systems that had built themselves around her? What did that say about the nature of love and control and freedom? The plane climbed higher. Below them, Korea disappeared completely. Ahead of them lay a new life that neither of them believed in yet, but both of them were choosing anyway. And Amara understood something with absolute clarity. She would never be free. But maybe, just maybe, she would be safe. And maybe, for now, that had to be enough. Amara and Marcus just disappeared. Not as fugitives running from the law, as two people choosing to burn down everything they were to become something new. But here's what happens when you try to disappear. Someone always finds you. Patterson isn't finished. The CIA doesn't just let assets walk away. And Amara has no idea what kind of danger is waiting for her in New Zealand. Not from Marcus. Not from his enemies. But from the people who created her in the first place. They're coming for her. And when they arrive, Amara will realize that disappearing from the world doesn't mean disappearing from herself. She can't outrun who she is. She can't escape the fact that she was designed, constructed, built for a specific purpose. And that purpose is far from over. The next part of this story isn't about running anymore. It's about building. It's about creating a life when you've been given nothing but ashes. It's about a baby born into the impossible situation her parents created. And it's about Amara finally, learning what it means to be truly free. If you felt that moment on the plane, when Amara realized that safety might be all she could ever have, you need to subscribe right now. Because what happens next in New Zealand will change your understanding of this entire story. Subscribe so you don't miss the moment Amara realizes she's 3 months pregnant and her daughter is about to be born into a life she never wanted for her. Subscribe so you can see what kind of mother she becomes when she's choosing her baby's future instead of running from her own. Drop a comment. Do you think they'll actually make it in New Zealand? Or is Patterson going to find them? Because honestly, disappearing is easy. Building a life while being hunted? That's the real impossible task. What happened next is where everything becomes real. Where the fantasy of escaping ends, and the reality of surviving together begins. Subscribe. You're about to meet the reason Amara chose Marcus. You're about to meet their daughter. And that meeting will break your heart. The cottage didn't look like much. That was the point. Amara stepped out of the rental car, and looked at what would be their home. A modest weathered cottage perched on the cliffs of New Zealand's South Island, overlooking a black sand beach that barely qualified as a tourist destination. Gray stone, wraparound porch, windows facing the endless ocean. Completely ordinary, deliberately forgettable. No one looking for a crime lord would think to search here. "Welcome home," Marcus said, and there was something in his voice that sounded like he actually meant it. Like this ordinary cottage was better than any penthouse he'd ever owned. The house was already furnished when they arrived. Marcus had arranged everything weeks in advance through layers of shell companies and untraceable channels. Bank accounts established. Documents prepared. New social security numbers. New driver's licenses. New everything. She was no longer Amara Chin, American consultant who'd been weaponized by the CIA. She was now Aria Morgan, a freelance writer from Canada, living a quiet life on the New Zealand coast with her husband, Daniel Kensington. The names felt like costumes. But maybe all names were costumes. Maybe identity itself was just a story you told about yourself until you believed it. The first morning in the cottage, Marcus made breakfast. Amara woke to the smell of eggs and toast, her pregnant body moving slowly out of bed. Her belly had swollen significantly in the last few weeks. Their daughter was coming soon. Maybe 3-4 weeks away. Marcus was at the stove when she emerged, wearing a simple white t-shirt and jeans. He looked different here. Lighter somehow. Less like a crime lord and more like a man who was just learning how to be human. "Do you want to stay?" he asked. It was the first thing out of his mouth every morning. Not a question with expectation. Just a genuine question. Giving her the space to say no if she needed to. Yes, Amara said, and she meant it more each day. He brought her breakfast on a wooden tray. Eggs. Toast with butter and jam. Tea because coffee made her nauseous now. He sat across from her at the small kitchen table, watching her eat like her consumption of food was the most important thing happening in his world. I'm going to build the crib today, he said. Finally. I've been procrastinating. Amara almost laughed. Marcus Kong is procrastinating about furniture assembly? Daniel Kensington, he corrected gently. And yes. Apparently, I'm scared of instruction manuals. He said it like a confession. Like admitting he was afraid of flat-pack furniture was the same as admitting he'd been afraid of losing her. I'll help, Amara offered. I'd like that. They spread the crib parts across the living room floor that afternoon. The instruction manual was incomprehensible. Tiny drawings. Unhelpful arrows. Pieces that seemed to have no purpose. Marcus read through it twice, then looked at Amara with an expression of total defeat. This is a psychological weapon, he said seriously. Whoever designed this is a sadist. Amara laughed. It was the kind of laugh that came from genuine joy, not forced politeness. She laughed at the sight of this dangerous man being defeated by Allen wrench and wooden dowels. Here, she said, taking the manual. You're reading it upside down. I am not, he looked. He was. That explains why the pieces don't fit. They worked together. She guided. He assembled. His hands were careful and precise even as he cursed at the wood and the bolts and the general stupidity of crib design. And Amara realized something. She liked this version of him. This version that was patient. That laughed at his own mistakes. That could admit he didn't know something. By evening, the crib was standing. Whitewood. Safe. Ready for their daughter. Marcus stood back and studied his work. She's going to sleep in something I built, he said quietly. I want her to know that. I want her to grow up understanding that her father built things. Tangible things. Not just empires made of blood and money. Amara moved to stand beside him. Their hands found each other without thinking about it anymore. The habit of touching had become natural. She'll know, Amara said. She'll grow up knowing her father is complicated. That he made mistakes. That he tried to be better. Will she forgive me? Marcus asked. She might. Or she might carry her own trauma about how she was born. We'll deal with that when she's old enough to understand it. Marcus squeezed her hand. I'm glad we're doing this together. They talked about everything now. Late at night, lying in bed with Amara's pregnant body curled against Marcus's chest, they spoke about things they'd never articulated before. I was wrong to trap you, Marcus said one night. I know I say I regret it, but I need to say it clearly. I was wrong. I took away your choice. I violated your body. I violated your autonomy. And nothing I do now will ever erase that. Amara was quiet for a long moment. Yes. You were wrong. But I also need to say something. I'm learning to trust you. Not because you've erased what you did, but because you're not pretending it didn't happen. Every day you ask if I want to stay. Every day you acknowledge that I could leave. That means something. Does it mean forgiveness? He asked. No, Amara said. Forgiveness implies going back to how things were before. But things can never be how they were before. All I can do is accept who you are and choose to stay anyway. Marcus pulled her closer. That's more than I deserve. Yes, she agreed. But it's what I'm giving you. The cottage became their world. Amara started writing in a journal. Just observations. Small moments. The way the light hit the ocean in the morning. The way Marcus laughed when he made mistakes. The way their daughter moved inside her. She wasn't writing to be published. She was writing to process. To understand. To document a life that nobody knew she was living. Marcus disappeared for hours into the small office they'd set up, making phone calls to lawyers and prosecutors in Korea. He was orchestrating his own downfall. Turning evidence. Facilitating the dismantling of his syndicate. Every call was another step away from who he'd been. One afternoon, Amara found him sitting at the desk with his head in his hands. What happened? She asked. It's done, he said quietly. The last of my lieutenants has been arrested. The BO syndicate is officially dissolved. My assets have been seized or liquidated. Everything I built is gone. Amara stood behind him and placed her hands on his shoulders. How does that feel? Like I can breathe, he said. For the first time since my mother died, I can actually breathe. As Amara's due date approached, they began preparing not just for their daughter's arrival, but for the conversation they'd eventually have with her. What do we tell her? Amara asked one evening on the cottage porch. The sun was setting over the ocean, painting everything gold and pink. Their view. Their moment. Marcus was quiet for a long time. We tell her the truth. When she's old enough to understand it. We tell her that her parents found each other in the worst possible way. That her father did terrible things. That her mother was manipulated and trapped. That our love is built on ashes and obsession and fear. He paused. But we also tell her that we chose her. That we chose to build a life together despite everything. That we chose to become better versions of ourselves, so we could be the parents she deserved. That's a heavy story to give a child, Amara said. Yes, Marcus agreed. But she deserves the truth. Not a sanitized version. Not a fairy tale. The real story. And if she grows up hating us for how we started, at least she'll know we were honest about it. Amara rested her head on his shoulder. Their hands found each other on the porch railing. I think she'll understand, Amara said. I think she'll grow up knowing that love is complicated. That people are capable of being monsters and humans at the same time. That sometimes you have to burn down your entire world to save the person you love. 3 weeks before her due date, their daughter was very active. Amara felt her constantly now. Not gentle flutters. Actual kicks. Movements that pushed against her skin and made her belly change shape. She'd lie in bed at night and watch the waves of movement, amazed that there was an entire human being growing inside her. One morning, Marcus pressed his palm against her belly and felt their daughter move against his hand. His eyes widened like he was experiencing something sacred. She's real, he whispered. Very real, Amara confirmed. And she's coming soon. Marcus kept his hand there, feeling their daughter's movements. What if I'm not a good father? He asked. You'll probably make mistakes, Amara said honestly. You'll probably struggle with letting her have autonomy. You'll probably want to control her life the way you've controlled everything else. But I'll be there to stop you. And more importantly, she'll be there to call you out on it. That's the scariest part, Marcus admitted. Not that I might fail her. But that she might inherit my darkness. That she might grow up with my obsessive tendencies. That she might make the same mistakes I made. Or, Amara said, she might grow up knowing exactly what the cost of those mistakes is. She might grow up understanding her father's trauma and choosing to break the cycle. She might become someone completely different from both of us. Marcus moved to kiss her belly. Then he kissed Amara slow and tender. Thank you for staying. Thank you for letting me be her father. You earned it, Amara said. Every morning when you asked if I wanted to leave. Every time you admitted you were wrong. Every moment you chose to be better instead of retreating into who you were. That evening, they sat on the cottage porch as the sun dropped below the horizon. The ocean was dark now. The sky was turning purple and gold. Everything felt quiet, peaceful, like the world had finally stopped demanding something from them. Amara leaned against Marcus's side. His arm was around her shoulders. His other hand rested on her belly, feeling their daughter move between them. Are you happy? He asked. Amara considered the question with complete honesty. I'm not sure happiness is the right word. I'm safe. I'm building something real with someone who once terrified me. I'm about to meet our daughter. But happy? I don't know if I'm allowed to be happy after everything that's happened. Why not? Because happiness feels like forgetting. And I don't want to forget. I want to remember exactly why I chose this. I want to remember the fortress and the trap and the choice to stay. I want that to be part of my story forever. Marcus kissed the top of her head. Then maybe you're not happy. Maybe you're something better. Maybe you're free. Amara felt their daughter kick. A strong movement. A presence. A reminder that despite everything, Despite the darkness and the manipulation and the impossible beginning, something good was coming. I'll settle for that, she said. They sat in silence as the sun disappeared completely, leaving only stars and the sound of waves crashing against the rocks below. The ocean had been witness to their entire story. The Seoul penthouse overlooking the skyline. The Jeju Island fortress. The beach where she'd tried to escape. And now this cottage on the edge of the world where she was choosing to build a life. The ocean didn't judge. The ocean just existed, eternal and indifferent to human drama. And somehow, that was exactly what Amara needed. A place where the past didn't matter. A place where they could just be. Even if that place was built on lies, constructed identities, and desperate love. Even if it was, in many ways, another kind of cage. At least it was a cage they'd chosen together. At least it was a cage that was becoming a home. Amara and Marcus have disappeared into New Zealand and built something that looks like a life. A cottage. A routine. A daughter on the way. And for the first time, it feels real. But Patterson isn't finished. While they've been building this quiet life, the CIA director has been building something else. A case. She's been documenting everything. The flight. The disappearance. The asset that went rogue. And she's been waiting for the perfect moment to strike. That moment is coming. Amara goes into labor. Their daughter is born. And the moment she takes her first breath, everything changes again. Because being a parent changes you. It makes you vulnerable in ways you never expected. It gives someone else the power to hurt you that you'd spent your entire life avoiding. Their daughter becomes their greatest weakness. And Patterson knows it. If you felt that moment on the porch. When Amara and Marcus sat together and realized they'd actually done it. They'd actually built a life. You need to subscribe right now. Because what happens when that baby is born will shatter the peace they've found. Subscribe so you don't miss the moment Amara goes into labor. Subscribe so you can see what kind of father Marcus becomes. Subscribe so you can watch a love story transform into something even more complicated. Parenthood. Drop a comment. Do you think their peace will last? Or is everything about to fall apart the moment their daughter is born? Because honestly, this is when the real test begins. This is when Amara and Marcus find out if their love is strong enough to protect another human being. The birth is coming. And with it comes a danger they never anticipated. Subscribe. You're not going to want to miss the moment everything changes again. 3:47 a.m. Amara woke to a sharp pain that cut through her abdomen like lightning. She gasped, her hand instinctively moving to her belly, and for a moment, there was only confusion. This wasn't supposed to happen. She was 3 weeks early. Marcus. Her voice came out ragged. Marcus, wake up. He was awake before she finished speaking. Years of being a crime lord had taught him to exist in a state of perpetual readiness. His eyes snapped open. His body tensed. What's wrong? He asked, already moving. I think I'm having contractions. But it's too early. We're not supposed to. Another pain hit. This one was worse. Marcus was already pulling on clothes, moving with the kind of efficiency that came from training, not panic. Hospital. We're going to the clinic. Now, the local clinic was small but well-equipped. By the time they arrived, Amara's contractions were coming closer together. Every 5 minutes. Then 4. The pain was unlike anything she'd ever experienced. A tightening that felt like her body was rebelling against her. The midwife, Margaret, was waiting when they arrived. She was in her 60s, with kind eyes and the competence of someone who'd delivered 1,000 babies. First pregnancy? She asked, already examining Amara. Yes, Marcus answered, not leaving Amara's side. Margaret did an ultrasound, studied the screen, then looked at them both. Good news, she said. You're in labor. Real labor. Your daughter is ready to come. Early, but she's developed enough. She's coming today. Amara had never seen Marcus like this. The man who'd built an empire. The man who'd killed without hesitation. The man who'd controlled every variable of his life was completely undone by the realization that this was something he couldn't control. He held her hand through every contraction. When the pain got bad, and it got very bad, he didn't look away. He didn't flinch. He just stayed present, his dark eyes tracking her face like she was the only thing that mattered in the world. "Breathe," he whispered. "Just breathe through it." Between contractions, he spoke to her in Korean. Words she only half understood, but felt completely. Apologies. Promises. Declarations of love wrapped in a language that had become theirs. "Mayanhi," he murmured. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for all of this. For the trap. For the pain. For bringing you into darkness." Amara squeezed his hand so hard her nails probably left marks. "Not your fault," she gasped. "Right now. Not your fault." "Everything is my fault," he said, and his voice was breaking. "Everything that led to this. But she's going to be so beautiful. She's going to be perfect. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure she knows she's loved." The contractions kept coming. Waves of pain that felt like the world was ending and being reborn simultaneously. Amara lost track of time. Lost track of everything except the pressure building inside her and Marcus's hand holding hers and the knowledge that soon, very soon, her daughter would exist in the world. Margaret was murmuring encouraging things. "You're doing great. Almost there. Your baby is coming." Nadia was born as the sun crested over the horizon. 6:43 a.m. The moment her daughter took her first breath, Amara felt something break open inside her chest. Not just love. Something bigger. Something that felt like her entire life had been waiting for this moment. The baby was crying. A small, perfect cry that meant her lungs were working. That she was alive and real in theirs. They placed Nadia on Amara's chest, and she was so small. So impossibly small and perfect and wholly, completely real. "She's beautiful," Amara whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Oh my God, she's beautiful." Marcus was silent. When Amara looked at him, she saw tears running down his face too. This powerful man was crying looking at their daughter, like she was a miracle. Like she was proof that despite everything, the manipulation, the trap, the impossible beginning, they'd created something good. "Hello, Nadia," he whispered in Korean. Then in English. "Hello, my daughter. I'm your father. And I promise, you will never know the kind of loss I've known. You will be safe. You will be loved. You will be so, so loved." His voice broke on the last word. Margaret smiled at them like she witnessed this kind of transformation every day. Maybe she did. Maybe birth transformed everyone who experienced it. "You two are going to be wonderful parents," she said softly. 3 days later, they brought Nadia to the cottage. Everything felt different now. The rooms that had been empty felt full. The cottage that had been a refuge became a home. The ocean outside their window became a lullaby. And Marcus, the man who'd built an empire on control, became completely undone by the needs of one tiny human. He learned quickly though. Diaper changes. Bottle preparation. The difference between a hungry cry and a tired cry. He approached fatherhood with the same intensity he'd brought to everything else, which meant reading parenting books at 3 a.m. and asking Margaret questions over the phone at all hours. Amara watched him with their daughter and realized something profound. He was trying to undo his own childhood. He was trying to ensure that Nadia never felt unsafe, never felt like a burden, never felt like a consequence rather than a choice. One night, 3 weeks after Nadia's birth, Amara found Marcus on the cottage porch holding their daughter while she slept. He was just holding her, watching her, like she was the only thing keeping him tethered to the world. "Can't sleep?" Amara asked, sitting beside him. "She's so small," Marcus said quietly. "How is something so small supposed to survive in a world this dangerous?" Amara rested her head on his shoulder. "She has us. That's how." "But what if it's not enough?" His voice was raw with fear. "What if I'm not enough? What if she grows up and realizes her father is a criminal? What if she's ashamed?" "Then we'll deal with that," Amara said. "When she's old enough to understand it." "But Marcus, right now, she just needs to be safe and loved. And you're giving her both." Marcus looked down at Nadia sleeping in his arms. His daughter. The reason he'd burned down his empire. The reason he'd become someone new. The 3 a.m. feedings became their time. While Nadia drank from her bottle, while the rest of the world was asleep, Amara and Marcus sat in the dark living room and talked about everything they'd never said out loud. "What do we tell her?" Amara asked one night. "When she's old enough to understand. About you. About what you did." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "The truth. When she's old enough, she deserves to know who her father really is. Not sanitized. Not excused. Just the truth." "That her father got her mother pregnant to trap her?" "Yes," Marcus said. "And that her father was a crime lord. And that her mother was manipulated by a government agency. And that despite all of that, despite the darkness and the choices we made, we chose to build a life together anyway." He paused. "But also that her father changed. That he realized his obsession was killing him. That meeting her mother made him want to be better. Not perfect, but better." Amara watched him feed their daughter. Watched the tenderness in his hands. The way he looked at Nadia like she was the greatest accomplishment of his life. "She'll probably grow up hating us," Amara said quietly. "Maybe," Marcus agreed. "But at least she'll know we were honest about it. At least she'll understand that love is complicated. That people are capable of being monsters and humans at the same time. That the world doesn't offer easy choices." Nadia finished eating and fell asleep in his arms. Marcus didn't move. He just sat there holding their daughter while the ocean crashed outside, and the stars wheeled overhead, and the rest of the world had no idea they existed. The cottage wasn't just a place to hide anymore. It became a home. Amara hung photographs on the walls. Photos of Nadia sleeping. Photos of Marcus holding her. Photos of the three of them on the porch watching the sunset. Not for an audience. Just for them. To document the life they were building. Marcus stopped taking phone calls. The lawyers, the prosecutors, the paperwork, all of it was handled remotely now. He was fully present. Fully invested in the day-to-day reality of fatherhood. He taught himself to braid Nadia's hair, even though she was too young to have much hair to braid. He built a mobile that hung above her crib, carefully balanced so it spun slowly in the breeze from the open window. He sang to her in Korean, lullabies his mother had sung to him. Amara would watch him and see the boy he'd been. The 8-year-old who'd lost his mother. The man who'd built an empire to prevent that loss from ever happening again. And now, the father who was determined that his daughter would never know the kind of darkness he'd known. One evening, Margaret came by for a checkup. As she was leaving, she pulled Amara aside. "Your husband," she said quietly. "I've seen a lot of fathers over the years. But I've never seen one so devoted. So protective. It's like she's the most important thing in the world to him." "She is," Amara said. "I can tell," Margaret said. "Whatever his story is, whatever brought you both here, he loves that child fiercely. That's what matters." 3 months after Nadia's birth, Amara no longer thought of the cottage as a hiding place. It was home. Not because of what it was. Because of who was in it. Because of the life they were building. Because of the 3 a.m. feedings and the lullabies and the way Marcus looked at their daughter, like she was proof that redemption was possible. One night, after Nadia had finally fallen into deep sleep, Amara found Marcus on the porch. She sat beside him, and he wrapped his arm around her shoulders without a word. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "Leaving everything behind?" "No," he said immediately. "Not for a second. Everything I built before this was a prison. The money, the power, the control. It was all just a way to avoid feeling the pain of losing my mother." He paused. "But this, you Nadia, this cottage, this life. This is the first time I've ever felt genuinely safe. Because it's not built on power. It's built on love. And love is the only thing nobody can take away from you." Amara leaned her head against his shoulder. "Even Patterson can't take this away?" "Even Patterson," he confirmed. They sat in silence, listening to the ocean. Listening to Nadia's soft breathing through the open window. Listening to the quiet sounds of the life they'd built from ashes. Later that night, Amara found Marcus asleep in the armchair by Nadia's crib. Their daughter was sleeping on his chest, her tiny hand wrapped around his shirt. And Marcus was holding her even in sleep, his arm protective around her small body. Looking at them like that, her dangerous husband and her perfect daughter, Amara realized something with absolute clarity. This was the only future she wanted. Not the fortress. Not the penthouse. Not the empire. This quiet life with a man she'd never planned to love, a daughter she'd never expected to have, and a cottage on the edge of the world where nobody knew who they really were. She took out her phone and took a photograph. Not to share. Just to remember. To document this moment when everything had finally stopped being a nightmare and had become something real. Marcus stirred slightly, his eyes opening. He looked at Amara and smiled. Not the dangerous smile of a crime lord. Just the tired, genuine smile of a father who'd finally found what he was looking for. Come sleep, he whispered. Both of you. Amara settled into the space beside him, careful not to disturb Nadia. She rested her head on his shoulder, her arm across their daughter. And in that moment, with the ocean as witness and the stars overhead and her daughter sleeping between them, Amara finally understood. You don't need to be free to be happy. Sometimes the cage becomes a home. Sometimes the monster becomes a father. Sometimes love is enough. Amara just had a moment of perfect clarity. This is her life now. A cottage. A man who loves her obsessively. A daughter who will grow up knowing exactly who her parents are. And she chose all of it. But here's what she doesn't know yet. Patterson has been waiting for exactly this moment. The moment Amara became vulnerable through motherhood. The moment she had something to lose besides her own life. The moment her daughter became her greatest weakness. While they've been living in quiet peace, building a family, establishing routines, Patterson has been building something else. Leverage. She knows where they are. She knows their new names. She knows they have a daughter. And she's been documenting everything. Waiting for the right moment to use the only weapon that will actually work against Marcus Kong. His child. 3 years pass quietly. Nadia grows. She becomes a real person with opinions and personality, and a bond with her father that is unbreakable. And during those 3 years, Amara almost forgets about Patterson. Almost forgets about the past. Almost believes they've actually escaped. That's when Patterson makes her final move. If you felt that shift, when Amara watched Marcus sleep with their daughter, and realized this was the life she wanted, you need to subscribe right now. Because this where everything is going to test everything they've built. The question isn't anymore, will they stay together? They've answered that. The question is, what will Amara choose when Patterson comes back and threatens the one thing that matters more than anything? Subscribe so you don't miss the epilogue. Subscribe so you can see what happens 3 years later when the past finally catches up with them. Drop a comment. Do you think Patterson will find them? Or have they actually managed to disappear permanently? And if Patterson does find them, whose side will Amara choose when she has to protect her daughter? Subscribe. You've come this far with Amara and Marcus. You need to see how their story ends. 3 years. That's how long they'd been invisible. 3 years of quiet mornings and ordinary dinners. And the kind of peace that only comes when you stop running and accept that you've finally found ground solid enough to stand on. The cottage was no longer borrowed. It was home. The walls were covered with photographs now. Nadia's first steps. Nadia's second birthday. Marcus building sandcastles. Amara writing on the porch. The 3 of them tangled together on the kitchen floor, laughing about something that would seem silly to anyone else, but meant everything to them. Nadia was 3 years old, and she was perfect in the way that only children of broken people could be perfect. Intelligent like her mother, intense like her father, but holy, completely her own. She had Marcus's dark eyes and Amara's quick smile. She had questions about everything and a curiosity that seemed bottomless. She called Marcus Daddy, with a confidence that suggested she'd never known him as anything but the man who braided her hair and built her crib and told her stories about faraway mountains and brave women divers. Amara worked as a freelance writer now. Articles. Essays. Nothing that required extensive background checks or public appearances. Just words on screens that paid their bills and let her document her thoughts about a life that nobody knew she was living. Marcus had started a small legitimate business, boat tours and fishing expeditions for tourists. His clients never knew they were spending their days with a man who'd once been a crime lord. They just knew he was knowledgeable, safe, quiet in a way that made them feel protected. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. They'd built a life so ordinary it was almost criminal. Tay and Minsk had stayed for the first year, then gradually faded back into whatever shadows they'd come from. Their loyalty was to Marcus, and Marcus no longer needed protection. He needed to be invisible. They remained vigilant though. Amara still memorized license plate numbers. Marcus still maintained untraceable bank accounts. They kept passports current and escape plans updated. Not because they were paranoid, because they'd learned that the world didn't forgive people like them, and safety meant always being prepared to run. But the running never came. Patterson remained a phantom, a threat that had slowly faded into legend. They hadn't heard from the CIA in 3 years. No letters, no warnings, no attempts to drag Amara back into the machinery of government. It was as if they'd simply disappeared so completely that they stopped existing in any official capacity. One afternoon, Marcus took Nadia to the black sand beach while Amara worked inside. Amara watched them from the cottage window as she typed, Marcus walking slowly so Nadia could keep pace. Nadia asking questions about everything. Why the sand was black, where it came from, how the ocean never ran out of water. Her father answered every question with patience, with love, with the kind of attention that suggested his daughter was the most important research project he'd ever undertaken. Later, when they came back inside dripping wet and laughing, Nadia asked the question Amara had been waiting for. Daddy, why do we live here and not in a big city like everyone else? Marcus and Amara exchanged a look over Nadia's head. Because, Marcus said carefully, a very important man fell in love with a very smart woman, and together they decided to build a quiet life. Why didn't you stay with other people? Nadia pressed. She had his curiosity, his refusal to accept simple answers. Because, Amara said, we like our privacy, and because we love our quiet life. Because sometimes the best thing you can do is step away from the noise and build something real with the people you love. Nadia seemed to accept this, though Amara could see her filing it away, storing it up, preparing to ask deeper questions as she got older. Someday, they'd have to tell her the real story. Not now. Not when she was 3 and still believed in simplified versions of how the world worked. But someday, when she was old enough to understand nuance and trauma, and the fact that people could do terrible things and still be worthy of love, they'd tell her everything. The news came through an article Amara was reading while researching a piece on organized crime in Southeast Asia. Former crime lord Cho Marcus Kong declared dead after 3 years missing. The article detailed his disappearance, his criminal operations being dismantled by Korean authorities, his rivals claiming credit for his demise, rumors of assassination, theories about witness protection programs. But the conclusion was clear. Marcus Kong, head of the BO syndicate, was officially dead. Amara read it twice, feeling something shift inside her chest. He really had done it. He'd erased himself so completely that the man he'd been no longer existed in any official sense. Daniel Kensington was real. Marcus Kong was a ghost story that organized crime families told their children to explain where he'd gone. She found Marcus on the porch, holding Nadia as she napped against his shoulder. They declared you dead, she said quietly. Marcus didn't even look surprised. I know. My lawyers arranged it months ago. They needed to finalize his death, so there'd be no active investigation. No threats the CIA could follow. Amara sat beside them, watching her daughter sleep in her father's arms. Are you okay with that? She asked. Being dead. Marcus looked down at Nadia, then at Amara. I think I've been dead for a long time, he said quietly. The man I was, the crime lord, the obsessed hunter, the man who built his life on fear and control. He died the moment I decided to let you choose. Being legally dead now? That's just making it official. That evening, they sat on the porch as the sun dropped toward the horizon. Nadia was playing in the sand below, building castles that the tide would wash away. Marcus and Amara watched her, their hands intertwined in a way that had become automatic over 3 years. I forgive you, Amara said. The words were so quiet Marcus almost missed them. He turned to look at her, his eyes searching her face like he was trying to find the trick in the statement. What? He asked. I forgive you, she repeated. Not because what you did was right. It wasn't. Trapping me was wrong. Getting me pregnant was wrong. Obsessing over me was wrong. All of it was unforgivable. She paused. But you've spent every single day trying to be worthy of my forgiveness. And that matters. That changes things. Marcus's eyes filled with tears. I never thought you'd. His voice broke. I know, Amara said. I wasn't sure I would either. But watching you be a father, watching you choose Nadia's autonomy over your own need for control, watching you dismantle everything you built, watching you choose to be better every single day. She squeezed his hand. That's forgiveness. Not forgetting. Just choosing to move forward knowing exactly what you did, and why I'm choosing to stay anyway. Marcus kissed her then. It was different from the desperate kisses of the beginning. Different from the possessive kisses of the fortress. This was a kiss that tasted like acceptance. Like peace. Like the kind of love that had survived everything and chosen to stay. When they pulled apart, Marcus was quiet for a long moment. I need to tell you something, he said finally. Something I've never said out loud. Amara waited. I was never going to let you go, he admitted. Even if you'd left with Patterson. Even if you'd testified against me and put me in prison. Even if you'd asked to leave 1,000 times. I would have found a way to make you stay. I would have burned down every country between here and Atlanta if necessary. He paused. That's the part of me I'm still ashamed of. Not the trap. Not even the obsession. But the fact that I would have destroyed everything, including you, to keep you in my life. Amara looked at him for a long moment. Then she laughed. It was sad but honest. I know, she said. That's exactly why I chose to stay. I needed someone who would never leave me, even when I wanted to leave myself. I needed someone so obsessed with keeping me safe that I'd never have to be afraid of abandonment. She shook her head. We're both broken, Marcus. You know that, right? We're both damaged in ways that normal people would find horrifying. But maybe that's okay. Maybe broken people can build something stronger than whole people ever could. Because we know exactly what we're building it on. We know it's built on ashes. We know it's built on trauma and obsession and love that's probably technically unhealthy. She paused. But it's real. And that's more than most people ever get. Marcus pulled her close. And they sat like that, watching their daughter play in the sand, watching the sun drop lower, watching the day fade into evening. What do you think she'll become? Amara asked. Our daughter. When she grows up. I don't know, Marcus said. I hope she becomes someone completely different from us. Someone who doesn't need the kind of love we have. Someone who can have healthy relationships and normal friendships, and a life that doesn't require disappearing. But, Amara pressed, hearing the unspoken caveat. But I think she'll understand us, Marcus continued. I think she'll grow up knowing that her parents loved each other in complicated, messy ways. That sometimes love looks like obsession. That sometimes the person who traps you is also the person who saves you. That the world doesn't offer clean choices, and sometimes you have to choose the least destructive option available. Amara rested her head on his shoulder. She'll probably spend her childhood in therapy trying to understand us, she said. Definitely, Marcus agreed. But at least she'll have the truth. At least she won't grow up wondering why her parents were the way they were. She'll know exactly what we did and why we did it. Nadia came running up the porch then, sandy and laughing, her small hands full of shells she'd found. Daddy, Mommy, look what I found. Marcus lifted her onto his shoulders in one smooth motion. Amara wrapped her arms around both of them, creating a small circle of 3 people who shouldn't exist but somehow did. Somewhere in a building in Washington, D.C., a file sat on a desk marked closed asset expired. Director Patterson had finally given up. The asset had gone rogue, disappeared, and become impossible to track. The mission had failed. The operative had escaped. The case was officially closed. But in her most honest moments, Patterson still wondered. She wondered if the woman she'd created, constructed so carefully for a specific purpose, had actually found something real in the wreckage of her constructed life. She wondered if choosing the monster had actually been the right choice. She wondered if she'd misjudged Amarachan so completely that she'd inadvertently created the one variable she could never predict. A woman who could choose her own captivity. Patterson would never know. Because Amara wasn't looking for rescue anymore. She wasn't writing letters that could be intercepted. She wasn't making phone calls that could be monitored. She wasn't taking any of the paths that Patterson had carefully constructed to pull her back. She'd become invisible not through running, but through building something that didn't require running. As the sun touched the horizon, painting the New Zealand coast in shades of gold and pink, Daniel held Amara and Nadia close. His daughter laughed about something. His wife rested her head against his shoulder. The ocean crashed against the rocks below, eternal and indifferent to human drama, as it had been since the beginning of time. A family that shouldn't exist, living in a corner of the world that didn't know them, invisible to everyone except each other. And that was enough. That was everything. Their story wasn't a fairy tale. It was messy and complicated and built on ashes. It was a story about a woman who was trapped and a man who loved obsessively, and a system that tried to weaponize them both. It was a story about choosing the lesser evil because sometimes the world didn't offer good choices. It was a story about how the cage you choose becomes a home. It was a story about how the monster can teach you how to live. It was a story about how love, real love, isn't about being perfect. It's about choosing each other every single day despite knowing exactly what you're getting. As Daniel held Amara close and felt Nadia fall asleep against his shoulder, watching the sunset paint the sky in colors that changed every moment but never truly disappeared, he understood something he'd never fully grasped before. Freedom wasn't the absence of cages. Freedom was choosing who was holding you. And he'd chosen well. So had she. Years later, when Nadia would be old enough to understand, her parents would sit her down and tell her the real story. They wouldn't hide anything. They'd tell her about the obsession and the trap and the pregnant test discovered in a penthouse bathroom. They'd tell her about the fortress on an island, and the woman from a government agency, and the choice made on a beach. And they'd tell her something else. We did terrible things to each other, Nadia. Your father took away your mother's choice. Your mother was used as a weapon without her knowledge. Both of us were broken in ways that normal families aren't. But we chose to build something real from those broken pieces. We chose each other. Every single day. And that choice gave us you. They'd pause. Your father spent his entire life building empires to protect himself from pain. Your mother spent her entire life being manipulated by systems that claimed to protect her. But in the ruins of both those lives, they found something true. Not perfect, but real. And Nadia would grow up understanding something that most people never learn. Love isn't about being saved. It's about choosing your savior knowing exactly who they are, and what they're capable of. It's about building a life so real that the world can't touch it. It's about the cage becoming a home. It's about the monster teaching you how to live. This is where the story ends. Not with a wedding. Not with redemption. But with a family sitting on a porch watching the sunset, understanding exactly who they are, and choosing each other anyway. Amara and Marcus, now Daniel and Arya, have disappeared so completely that they've become invisible. Patterson can't find them. Their enemies have forgotten them. They exist in a corner of the world that nobody knows about, building a life that shouldn't be possible, but somehow is. And the most beautiful part? Nadia will grow up knowing the truth about her parents. Not a sanitized version. Not a lie. The real story. The messy, complicated, dark, beautiful truth about how love can grow in the worst possible circumstances. If this story resonated with you, if you found yourself cheering for a woman who chose her captor, rooting for a man to become worthy of her love, understanding that sometimes the safest place in the world is in the arms of your monster, then you understand something fundamental about human nature. We're all broken. We're all looking for someone to hold us. And sometimes, the person holding you is someone the world would tell you to run from. But if they love you enough to let you choose them every single day, maybe they're not the monster. Maybe they're just someone who's learned to love the only way they know how. This story about Amara and Marcus is about all of us. About the ways we trap each other. About the ways we save each other. About the ways the cage becomes a home when you're with the right person. If you made it this far, if you followed them from Seoul to Jeju to New Zealand, if you believed in their impossible love even when it made you uncomfortable, thank you. Thank you for understanding that real love isn't always pretty. Sometimes it's dark and obsessive and born from trauma. But sometimes it's the most real thing that ever existed. Subscribe if you want more stories like this. Stories that don't apologize for their darkness. Stories that explore the complicated ways people love each other. Stories about monsters who become fathers and weapons who become mothers and broken people building something real from ashes. Drop a final comment. Do you believe they'll actually get there happily ever after? Or is there always going to be a part of you wondering if Patterson is still watching? Because maybe that's the point. Maybe they don't need happily ever after. They just need each other. Thank you for watching Amara and Marcus's story. Thank you for understanding that love, real love, looks different for everyone. And remember, the cage you choose is sometimes the only freedom you'll ever know.